Today we're going to talk about Monstrous. Monstrous is one of those dollar bin movies made by one of these two people. One of three groups here. It's one made by one of them. It's pretty indie, but it's actually really interesting, really well made. It's one of the very few films, if not the only film I've ever seen, that involves Bigfoot in some way. Now, despite the way the cover looks, this isn't some sort of monster slasher movie where Bigfoot is the big monster that kills everybody. In fact, Bigfoot is used as a scapegoat. This film is actually about three main characters here. One of the main characters, I don't know which one it's based off of. I know this guy is probably the boyfriend character. So I'm just gonna, if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. But let's say that Anna Shields here is the main female lead character who is maybe possibly the girlfriend or just friend of Grant Schumacher. They both live in the city, and they have friends that have gone missing, that have given somebody a ride up into the woods. And there is a legend in these woods about the Bigfoot that this guy, Grant, is kind of obsessed with, the Bigfoot monster. And the serial killer person has been using the Bigfoot legend to mask their victims. They blame it on the legend. And that's how they've been able to get away with it so far. Now, this guy's been researching all this stuff because his friends has went missing, right? So he's researched that there's usually someone from the city that asks for a ride out into the countryside that coincides with what his friend did before she went missing. So he arranges a similar drive from one of the people of the city up into the countryside, and he asks his friend to do the driving because he's faked his identity to be a girl instead. And he's actually used her picture and all that stuff as well. So she agrees to this because it's her friend too that went missing. And she drives this person from the city up into the countryside. And we learn that the person that she's driving is actually a girl, Rachel Finnegan. And this girl is driven up there by her. And she's quickly removes her pretenses, thinking that the girl is the serial killer, because they start to get connected. They start to get romantically entangled on the way up into the countryside, and then she confesses that she's was worried that she was a serial killer and all that stuff, and she says, well, clearly I'm not, blah, 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 blah. Then they have a romantic entanglement in the countryside house. We also learn that the countryside house has this invisible wall fence, kind of like a deer repellent. There's like a certain sound wave frequency that humans can't hear, but the deer can't stand. That's what she claims it is, to keep all the wildlife away from her country home. And we learn that the generator needs to be on in order for the fence, the sound frequency, to happen. And we later learn that it's actually Bigfoot who can't stand the sound frequency, and it's keeping Bigfoot out. And we learn that he's upset that the serial killer, who is the girl, has been blaming all the disappearances on him, and he wants to get his revenge for that. Because he's a misunderstood creature. The Bigfoot is a misunderstood creature. He's not the killer of the story. He's actually kind of the good guy in a way. The Bigfoot is always a misunderstood creature. It goes with all the memes of the Bigfoot character. So these two have a fight after they realize that she is the serial killer, actually, and their relationship falls apart. And she says, oh, you're different from the other girls, right? She says, you're different from the other girls. And Anna's kind of not happy about that because it's still one of her friends that got kidnapped, you know? So they have a fight. Some people get stabbed, she gets stabbed, they all get beat up, and one of the kidnapped girls shuts off the power, and Bigfoot breaks into the house and kidnaps Anna and takes her out to the countryside. And we learn that Grant, who has been trying to contact Anna, failing because there's very poor reception out here, has decided to drive up there himself to come get her. Bigfoot has cut him off and thrown him into the woods as well. And you get the feeling that Bigfoot did this just to protect him from the serial killer, because if he drove up there, she'd probably kill him, right? So he kidnaps him to save him, and he kidnaps her to save her. And they both wake up in the woods, and they decide to return to the country house to rescue the kidnapped girls that the serial killer lady has kidnapped. They manage to make it back. He takes a car back to the city to get help, and Anna Shields and the Rachel Finnegan character end up fighting to the death, and then the power cuts out. Grant manages to shut the power off again, and Bigfoot finally breaks in and defeats the serial killer. Bigfoot saves the day, and then the film ends with Bigfoot going back into the woods, and he's left both of them alive. And that's the film. Bigfoot is maybe in it for, at most, 4 or 5 minutes. And that's fine. That's fine. It doesn't have to be about Bigfoot. Even though the film is called Monstrous and stuff, the monster is actually the serial killer lady. The monster is the human. And the monster is actually the most human, nice guy out of the group. And I like that little twist at the end. It's really well shot. There's not terrible camera work. It's very indie, but the cast is really small. The setting is really small, so they were able to put the most of their budget where it needed to go in order to make the film look very competent and very nice. And I would give Monstrous a strong recommendation. I'd say it's one of the far better dollar bin movies I've ever seen. I would definitely recommend it, and I think it's very imaginative.